Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, look at that.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our, we're going to do public hearings first?
Yes, sir.
Welcome to our public hearing. Okay, Ms. Honeycutt, can you hear us? Ms. Honeycutt, can you hear us? Or you got video or audio? Is joining us.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, she is joining us because she is out of town, so. All right, so we're going to start our 6:30 public hearing. Madam Clerk, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Yes, sir. Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022, regarding an ordinance to dissolve the Allendale Consolidated Fire District Advisory Board and other matters related thereto.
Any speakers? Okay, council members. All right, next one, please.
A public hearing shall be held by the County Council of Charleston County beginning at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022, before final approval of an ordinance authorizing the amendment of a fee agreement among Charleston County, South Carolina, Cummins Incorporated, Patillo Lumber Company, and Palmetto Property LLC, among others.
Any speakers?
No.
Council members? Thank you. Next.
Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. on the operating budget ordinances for fiscal year 2023 for Charleston County government.
Any speakers?
Anthony Bryant.
Okay. Mr. Bryant, you will give us your name and your address, and we give you up to 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. You remember that? That's pretty good memory. Anthony G. Bryant, 2123 Cortland Avenue, North South Carolina 29403. The public comment is being made under the South Carolina Administrative Procedure Act, Title I.
You can pull that up if you want to say one thing. There you go.
Title I, Administration and Government, within the mission statement that you have posted online under the Freedom of Information Act, dealing with the county administrators' limitations regarding state law. South Carolina Public Service Commission has passed a 9.5% increase for Dominion Energy in the area regarding fuel costs. We hope that any associated costs that you're considering would factor in inflation for our residents in Charleston County in your third reading. So I hope that that's taken in serious consideration if the county administrator could contact the Public Service Commission, which is appointed by your congressional districts. The chairman of the Public Service Commission is appointed by James E. Clyburn. And we hope he understands the low to moderate income communities in his district that people will be struggling with this 9.5% increase in their rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Anybody else?
That's it.
Okay, any council members? Next one, Ms. Salisbury.
Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on the 7th day of June 2022 at 6:30 p.m. for the purpose of receiving comments on the adoption of a budget for the operation and maintenance of the solid waste disposal and resource recovery system.
Mr. Bryant?
South Carolina Administrative Procedure Act, Title I, Administration and Government, notice given by the administrator, limitations by under state law. Again, the concern is the inflation rates for all Charleston County residents, particularly those in low to moderate income communities. We definitely need to focus our attention on running these numbers very closely to ensure that it's not going to be an unfair burden based on housing costs, about 30%, other costs associated in the area. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Bryant, well, we will not be raising the solid waste disposal fee this year.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Any council members? All right, last one is the 23 budget purpose district.
Yes, sir. Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. on the operating budgets for fiscal year 2023 for Charleston County Parks and Recreation Commission, Cooper River Parks and Playground Commission, North Charleston District, St. Andrews Parks and Playground Commission, St. John's Fire District, and St. Paul's Fire District.
Anybody signed up? Any council members? Okay, that concludes our public hearings, right?
Yes, sir.
So now we move into
Finance.
Finance Committee, where we,
Comments, if you, we can take those whenever you want, though.
I think I'd probably want to take that, you think afterwards? Yeah, let's take that after this, but right before council meeting, our public comments. So now let's move into our Special Finance Committee, where we have two items. Item number one is curbside collection and solid waste franchise agreement amendment. What is the pleasure?
Move for staff recommendation.
Is there a second? Discussion, Mr. Swears?
Other than it not being Allendale and instead it's Ravenel, I don't think I saw any material on the agenda about this. Is this simply adding Ravenel to the existing umbrella contract?
I believe it is, and I believe we discussed this before, but it should have been on, but it didn't get on, but I'll let the attorney tell you, but it's already been discussed. We just added it to the agenda.
Yes, sir. You have a franchise agreement that allows for council to decide which areas this operates under. You can create the districts. You have that authority. You've created districts and outlined them in the current agreement. It does not include Ravenel. The mistake was actually mine. I have to apologize for the clerk. I relayed to her the wrong area. It was actually supposed to be Ravenel and not Allendale. But it's the same terms as everyone else. The residents will pay the same price. It's exactly, the only amendment that is coming forward is to add Ravenel to the agreement.
So, okay, that's good.
You got it, Mr. Swears? You understand it?
I'm good.
All right, anybody else? So we got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. Item 2A is nonprofit pandemic relief grants award. What is the pleasure? And then we open up for discussion.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Johnson, non-discussion. Anybody on discussion on this one? I think, yes, sir.
Thank you. I noticed on the yellow sheet, unless it's changed since we had gotten these, that the DCA and the administrator have not signed these as usually happens. Is there a reason for that? Did we move this along too quickly, Mr. Tootin or Mrs. Durant, or?
Mr. Durant, you want to answer that?
Councilman,
Mr. Moody, I'm sorry, Mr.
normally there are agenda meetings between staff where all the particulars are discussed about issues coming up to council. There was not one on this, so I reached out to DCA Durant. She also, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think was not comfortable moving forward until she had appropriate time to go through the process. So therefore, if she wasn't going to sign it, I wasn't going to sign it.
If I may, Mr. Moody, I did do my normal process would be to do a pretty high percentage review on a new department because these are new programs coming from a new department. And so I was not able to do what I would standardly do for that type of review. I did do a preliminary review today with the staff. We spent a few hours together. What I would say is there are a few documents they're still going to need to collect in order to complete the file. If council decides to proceed, I would just ask that we be able to allow staff to collect the necessary documents to complete the file prior to releasing the money.
Mr. Chair, how long have we been discussing this? Because I thought we had sent it back once before in order for, yes?
I have actually a little slide that shows.
See that.
Mr. Moody, you asked the question. Are you finished? Or you
No,
got
I'm
more
not
questions?
done yet.
Let him finish.
I guess I was going to ask you a little bit about what's your procedure. I mean, there's a lot of companies here. I mean, you can't audit all of them, I wouldn't think. Is there do you do a sampling, or I mean, what does your procedure look like?
So the typical procedure that I would follow for a new program and a new department would be a 50% review. We were able to do with the staff, and I do want to introduce to you all of our new staff that are working in this new department, which I was going to do when I gave the overview. But we did about 30% of the files today. We spent a few hours together, and there are documents that we found that we think we will be able to get, and it's permissible for us to collect them, but we would want to collect them before we released the funds.
Thank you. I mean, most of the companies on here are reputable companies. I didn't have any problem with that. I wonder if we might make contingent, Mr. Chairman, or whoever motion made, that if we approve this, make it contingent on Ms. Durant collecting the information she needs to. I would suggest that, but I didn't make the original motion. Thank you, sir.
I don't, Mr. Moody, object. If, it depends on whoever made the motion, but what I would request is those that have already met all the criteria not be held up because somebody else didn't do their work. It's not fair if you got 10 people on the list and 9 of them qualify and 1 don't, to hold up the other 9.
I agree.
So I don't have a problem with doing that, but before we go to that slide, I had a question. It's like the Catholic charities, I mean, can somebody tell me what did they lose to get 50,000, and then you got somebody like Neighbors Together only picked up about $18,000.
I'm going to let Mr. Davis answer the specifics
yeah.
on the application.
Can he come up to the mic? Because, I mean, I got a problem when you got people like that doing stuff in the community during the pandemic, was out there putting their lives on the line, and they didn't receive as much as, I see this, and then I see another group, East Cooper Outreach, House Hope and all Charleston, and then we got 180 Place. 180 Place received what? How many millions of dollars already from the first pandemic? Relief funded in the second. And these other people in the neighborhood, this is what we were talking about, people who were on the ground, boots on the ground, actually doing work in the community. And so I think somebody said, well, they had to produce a receipt of what they spent or what they lost. But I mean, how could you put money on someone's time as well as putting their life on the line when other people just stayed in behind closed doors and ain't got money? So maybe somebody can explain that to me.
Okay. Well, first of all, remember the purpose of this was to get money out quickly because there's still a second round coming and possibly even a third. What we had all decided in order to get the funds out quickly is that we would make it a reimbursable program. So for money that they already spent, we had to subtract what they got from PPP because you can't reimburse federal dollars with federal dollars. So all of the organizations who applied, they submitted all of the receipts and other. We also took financial statements from a certified public accountant. Anything that would pass federal muster, we allowed them to submit, and we got most of them qualified that way. There were a few that didn't. And in terms of one of the things that we found is that some of our organizations that are out there on the streets doing the heavy lifting, they are not set up to receive federal money. So we want to work with them. There was one person who submitted everything handwritten, which is simply we cannot accept based on federal guidelines. There's no doubt that they did the work. So we want to work with them, and we are putting things in place, working with SCASID and other organizations where we can help them with their bookkeeping. We can help them with their registration papers. We can help them with all those things so that they can qualify for this money.
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about these people on the list here who made it. I want to know what the Catholic charities did that was different from Neighbors Together and some of these other groups that got them more money.
It was based simply on the amount of receipts that they submitted minus whatever they got in federal pandemic relief.
So was this based on tithing or just based on community service for the Catholic charities? And I'm not bashing nobody. I just want to know for my constituents so I can answer the question when it's asked to me.
It's based simply on expenses. The expenses that they submitted to us, they submitted, when we gave them 8 different categories, including a miscellaneous category. So we were very broad with what they could submit. We took all of the receipts, anything that we could verify, and we pushed the bounds as far as we possibly could on what we would accept. As a matter of fact, we didn't get any complaints from the organizations in terms of what we could accept from them. So we took that dollar amount, we subtracted the PPP, or whatever they received from PPP from any source, and whatever was left over up to $50,000, the organization was awarded.
So, Mr. Chair, may I just make a statement, just looking at the list itself? You know, some of these organizations internally, they have a structure that can apply for such. You know, you mentioned some of these organizations that turned in handwritten documents, that sort of thing. Well, my goodness, God bless them for even trying. And so I think that says to us that we need to have more of more supports, maybe, specifically for those type of organizations, because it's not like they're doing something illegal or nefarious.
Absolutely.
They just do not have individuals working as chief operating people, or they don't have, staff to, sit on top of, programs that they could apply for all day long. These people are out there doing the type of work. So I think that I pray that we are set up in such a way that even if the federal guidelines does not permit, that we have some mechanism that would be able, instead of turning those people away or disqualifying them based on the handwritten nature of the application, that we have somebody, I know the libraries have done it, even as it related to the housing program or, the programs that we had initially with rent assistance and or electrical utilities assistance. They had to fill those things out for some people, and they had to provide literal support for individuals to be able to apply for these things. And I think that, we're looking to hire people. Hire somebody to do that.
We actually did have organizational support from South Carolina Association for Community and Economic Development that worked with folks to get their information into us. And, again, we're going to find the same thing when we get to the business discussion. There are businesses, there are nonprofits that just aren't set up to receive federal money. And yes, we are putting a program in place. We are working with them. We have the names of the organization. We've spoken to their leadership, and we've told them this is what you need to do so that you can be eligible for the second round. Because remember, this is only the first round. We were trying to get money out quickly.
So
we have a process in
what do they
place.
need to do? Because, see, I'm out there telling these people to apply. So what do they need to do to be eligible?
So first of all, anyone who applied this round that was not eligible, we will contact personally. They don't need to do anything but wait for us to get in touch with them. And we will walk them through exactly why it is they didn't qualify and what they can do to qualify for the next round. We are also working with on the nonprofit
So give me
side.
some examples, because I would like to know examples of what individuals did not provide or did not do.
Okay, there was one organization in particular that had provided book bags and things like that to students, and they could prove that they did those things. It was on Facebook, it was all that sort of stuff, but they had no records for it. They had no, and so basically they wrote out what
So
they had done.
you need receipts, or what do you need?
Well, for this one, because we were doing reimbursables, yes, we needed receipts. This is not how every program will work. We were trying to get the money out quickly. That's what we were instructed to do as a department, and that was the quickest way to do it, is just to make it reimbursable. This was never intended to be the end-all program. This was so that we could provide some relief for the people who were out there in the streets doing the work. So, again, there was another organization that had supplied supplies to a different organization, but they didn't have any records to show that. They didn't have anything that we could use in a federal audit to say, yes, they gave these things to this group. Now, we want to help them do more. We want to help them to continue their work, and we will. But we couldn't do it in this round because again, we still have to comply with CFR 200, the federal code that talks about how we distribute federal money. And so that is why the decision was made to do this as a reimbursable program. But again, we are waiting. We have the name of every organization, every business that wasn't eligible. We will contact them directly, and we will have provisions set up so that when they come in to apply the next time, for instance, the program that we are setting up on the business side, when folks come in, if they don't have a business license, we will help them get the business license. We have experts who will sit down with them and say, is your company structured correctly? For instance, we had companies that had their federal taxes in one name and a business license in another name, and the Secretary of State registered in yet another name. And some of them, we couldn't determine whether they were legitimate or not. Some of them are legitimate businesses. They just aren't organized properly to receive federal funds, and we want to help them with that.
You have any more questions?
I have many more questions, but I'll end it at that.
Mr. Moody, you done?
I'll follow up. March 10, 2020 Finance Committee, there's a number of guidelines. So they got to be a tax exempt 501c3. They have to be located within Charleston County. They have to provide direct assistance to Charleston County's individuals and families. Those are the eligibilities, and there's a couple other odds and ends. But if I hear you, what you're saying is that these folks, they get their organizational house in order next time. So that is, they've got their 501c3, their tax 80, whatever it is. They come back next time with the same examples of expenses they had this time. Chances are they will be funded next time, possibly.
Sorry, so repeat that one more time, please.
If the book bag people that you referenced,
Right.
okay, if they go up and they got their 501c3, they're located in Charleston County, they can prove they've helped individuals in Charleston County and families experiencing hardships. If they have all of that in order and bring you the same receipts next time, chances are they would probably be funded.
I don't think I can say that outright because, again, we still have to follow CFR 200. So
Okay.
the next program won't be reimbursable.
Okay.
So we will put up a pot of money. And, for instance, if an organization qualifies for, let's just say, $50,000, we still have a fiduciary responsibility to the federal government to make sure that that money is spent correctly.
Got it. Thank
So
you.
we will work with them so that they can, expend those funds in a proper manner.
I think it's admirable that you guys are. I mean, you could just say no, go away, go find a CPA or attorney and help you get all this stuff in order. That you guys are expending the resources of the county to help these small businesses get their organizations in order to be available, I think is admirable. So,
Mr. Chair,
Before I get to Mr. Darby and then Reverend Melton, read that what you just read a few minutes ago about the qualifications.
eligibility. This is from March 10 Finance Committee. This is our Community Revitalization Affordable Housing ARPA nonprofit pandemic relief program. There's 3
Okay,
items. Organizations that are recognized by the IRS as tax-exempt 501c3 organization.
Okay.
2 is organizations with a primary physical location within the county. And 3 is organizations which provide direct assistance to Charleston County's individuals and families experiencing hardships due to the pandemic. So those are the 3 must-haves.
but where in it does it say it has to be
Additional.
refundable expenses? And see, that's, their lines the parliament of confusion. That wasn't outlined. So if you had, does it say reimbursable items? And those 3 lines you read?
Organization must be able to provide documentation that sits March 1, 15. They have provided assistance to the general public in excess of the amount of which they are applying, minus any pandemic relief assistance. So it's like Mr. Davis said.
Okay, all right, so it's in there.
Yeah.
Mr. Darby, and then I'll go to Reverend Milton.
There were 3 general criteria. That's all it was. There was no small print about requiring this, requiring that. There were 3 criteria. That's all it was. Now, is this county restriction that we're talking about here?
No, sir. Federal restrictions.
So-
And there were 3 that he outlined there. But these are federal guidelines that we're
So
following.
why weren't all that included? Because I'm telling my folk there are 3 categories that you have to qualify for, and that's what I'm telling them. And now they're not being offered because of the small print.
The
The 501c3 Charleston County residents and experience hardship. That's what we tell our constituents. And we said there are dollars for you. That's what they expect. And now when they ask for this, now there's a small print behind that. Why weren't we informed of that? I mean, that's the question. Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Darby, when you look at the yellow sheet on March 10th that we're talking about, the eligibility determines that they are an existing entity in Charleston County. The next 5 requirements are the requirements of that money. So if we separate the organization's legit, it's a 501c3, then for us to give them money, we have to have the receipts to go along with it. So and we can change the way the yellow sheet was written, but we tried to do it so that you could see what the organization had to have and then what we had to have in order to give them money.
But my point, Mr. Rand, is that we were not informed of that. Our constituents not informed of that. That's the point. It was just the 3 categories that were sent out.
Yes, sir.
That's all.
yeah, that's the
That's
point.
all was sent out.
That's the point I also wanted to follow up with Mr. Darby, because certainly, I'm trying to put the word out as much as I can as well in order to help all of us understand and be educated and be at least where we need to be in order to apply. My question, again, Mr. Chairman, goes back to the yellow sheet, because this is the first time, and of course, I'm a new council person. I've only been here 2 years, right? And so what do I know? But I have never in my life seen a yellow sheet that has not been signed. And so I'm stupefied. I just don't know, how to receive that. And based on the legitimacy of the program, and we heard the criteria, we heard those things that have been outlined. We never said reimbursable program, and if it were going to be a reimbursable program, then that should have been, we've met umpteen times, I'm just using an Eastside Charleston word. We've met umpteen times since that, and I've never heard that until, we received this list. And then to receive a yellow sheet that hasn't been signed, what does that say about the legitimacy of the funds that we are trying to allocate under this program? And then lastly, we did identify organizations that are eligible. So why would we not sign a yellow sheet?
Okay, Mr. Rant, you want to answer?
Reverend Middleton, honestly, the answer is simple. The timing, like I mentioned earlier, that I would normally follow in a process as your DCA, it's my obligation to tell you that I've done my due diligence to assert that what my department has done is true and right and consistent with what you all have directed and what the federal guidelines require. We were not able to do what would normally happen because, remember, this yellow sheet was originally going to come forward on the 16th. And so what we were able to do since Thursday and today is do a modified review. What I think I mentioned, if I didn't, let me, if you all decide to go forward, what I would ask is that you let us go finish what we would do in our review, get the appropriate documents so that the files are complete, and then we will release that money. And yes, of course, if someone has already got everything, that's easy. We can do that process.
So, Mr. Chairman, under those conditions, why did we not pull this off the agenda?
Well, one of the reasons was I said I wanted to get this out of the way because it looked like it kept, delay. Okay? So what I'm hearing, Mr. Rand says, y'all would have had all this done by the 16th. So what I would suggest is, okay, those that are already qualified, you take care of them. And so y'all telling us those that are not, y'all will have everything done by the 16th.
Yes, sir.
Is that okay to the state?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Darby, I'm sorry.
Mr. Durant, if it weren't for you, for who you are, ma'am, I would say some things this afternoon, ma'am. I really would, ma'am. I would really say something this afternoon. Because as my grandmama says, something in the milk ain't clean. But because it's you, ma'am, and I believe in you. But when I see 3 general statements and then the small print, how does that make us look? As councilpersons, we don't know what we're talking about. So, again, because it's you, ma'am, I'll leave that alone.
And when I review the list, and some of these I can recognize, just being a Charlestonian myself, no preference to any of these that are on the list. But when I look at the list and some of whom that are on the list, it would also cause me to ask another question that I will not ask at this time.
And one final question. Out of these 11 that's before us now, how many of them have everything in place?
Nonprofit or
Yeah, the nonprofit, the
microbusiness?
pandemic, out of these 11 I see here.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know yet. That's part of what we would have done prior to the 16th to get that forward.
Davis, can you answer that question? Because you would have to send a recommendation to Mr. Rand. So I'm going to put you on the spot. How many of these 11 are already given everything they need?
I can't answer that question either because we haven't done a full audit.
Well, this is something.
When you say a full audit, what do you mean by full audit?
The staff went through a process. I sat through the first, let's
I,
say,
listen, lay it to me in layman's terms. Okay, when you say a full audit, what does that mean? I don't
meaning
need
that
to.
I, as a department head, would typically go through, just like Mr. Rand said, and check a certain number of applications that have gone through. That process was not followed. Again, I sat with them through the first part of the process. I was comfortable with the process. Then I went back to my director duties. At the end of the process, they submitted things to me. And I will say the staff did a fine job of combing through those. They even found some of their own errors and they brought things to our attention. So that's why, again, without having done a full audit, I can't say exactly. I mean,
But anybody in your staff here today can tell me that answer?
Can y'all stand up? I would love for the council.
Yeah, I'd like
We
to
have
know,
some wonderful
you know,
staff that we have hired
yeah.
to run this program. And I'd
you
like
don't
to
know, maybe your
introduce,
staff might know.
could I please, Shay, Chantel, Charmaine, Tammy, and Margaret? They have been, if you look at that schedule that's up there, when you all approved these FTEs in January, Mr. Davis started scrambling to stand the department up, create the programs, and kind of went through the process that you see up on the screen. So in the last 5 months, they've created 2 new
Yes.
programs. And I just think it's so important. They have worked so hard to accomplish what y'all's objectives are. I wanted you to meet them.
Okay. So, do you have anyone can give you that answer today? These
no, we
11 are
can't.
ready to go?
No, sir, we cannot.
Well, Mr. Chair, you know, as my grandmother would say, and she's dead, I am too done.
All right. So if this is passed tonight, this council is to show by the 16th, every name on this list will be vetted and
Yes,
ready
sir.
to move forward.
Yes, sir.
If they submit the right documents.
And Mr.
Okay,
Price,
let-
let me ask you, sir, and there are no county restrictions, Mr. Grant, on these dollars?
No, sir. This is solely based on the minimal guidelines that we have to follow for ARPA and CFR 200. Minimal, which is why we did it the way we did it.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Sines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Davis, Mr. Rent, I think it sounds like y'all are really bending over backwards to do a good job on this, and I appreciate it. It's got to be pretty tough because I know how people run their businesses and getting all this paperwork from people. A lot of times it's hard to explain to people what they need and to get it back to you. And so y'all are having a tough time with that. And plus you've got the federal regulations that you've got to follow. So I certainly respect that, and I respect the job y'all are doing. I want y'all to have enough time to get this done and to do it right. I want y'all to be satisfied that you've done your jobs the way y'all need to do them, that we don't rush this and get this out. So I'm very concerned about that. I think it looks like they're doing a heck of a job. I want to see them get it right. I want to give them the time to get it done correctly.
Mr. Chair, also with the formula, just looking at the numbers of those who have been deemed to be eligible, and as we look forward to the ones that may come after the fact, how are we determining, I know you said based on if they received, something from PPP or something from something else, but how are we determining, I heard Mr. Chairman ask why one group got 50,000, another group just got 2,000. So how, is there a sliding scale? Is there a metric that then sort of?
For the nonprofits or the businesses?
Let's take the businesses on the next one. Mr. Sass, I didn't mean to cut you off, but are you finished?
I'm finished, sir.
Mr. Moody?
Just one thing, but thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me. On March 10th, we had a finance committee, and I would just refer council to this. We voted on this. There's no fine print. There's 3 eligibility buttons, and there's 5 or 6 other requirements. There's no fine print. There's nothing hidden in anywhere out there. It's right there in black and white. We voted on it. We should know it.
But when we say documents,
Hold on, let him finish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
the Facebook thing could be a document, when proving that you did distribute or provided. So, I mean, there is a little fine print going there because it was not then said, it didn't say initially it had to be a receipt, right? They proved through documentation that, those things were given, right?
And we didn't just accept receipts. We also would accept anything from a CPA or anything that would pass federal muster. We gave everyone more than one. When they submitted to us, if their documentation wasn't acceptable, we would tell them and we would have a discussion with them about what else they could provide.
Mr. Pryor? I'm sorry.
Reverend?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, thank
Mr.
you.
Darby?
Let's not have this misconstrued now. Don't look at us, those who ask the questions, the bad guys, because we're doing this for small businesses. They're the heartbeat of the nation. And if we don't look out for small businesses, who are we going to look out for? Because when the rich folk come here, they're not just scrutinized. So don't look at us as being bad guys. Look at us being the good guys because we want to help small businesses, whether they're black, white, Latino, Jewish, whatever the case may be. That's our job. So don't portray us as the bad guy. We are asking questions because we want to help people. So please don't do that to me now. Don't do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Johnson.
are we going to see the presentation?
Is it, how long was the presentation?
There were 2 slides. I think we
I wanted to hear what she had to say.
You know, up on the board, members of council, in addition to introducing you to our staff, and we really want to keep our staff, and we're really happy that they're here and glad that they're working for us. I just wanted you to see an overview of the timeline. I know it feels like it has been a really long time, and there's no doubt that the ARPA money and the pandemic and the struggles, and you all have done a lot of things to award money over the last 6 months, prior 6 months. But in this overview, I wanted you just to see when you all acted on January 13th to allow Mr. Davis to hire staff. That began the process. In February 23rd, we gave a blue sheet to council that highlighted these programs that we were proposing based on what the neighborhoods and the communities had told us. In March 10th, we brought 2 yellow sheets forward. You passed both of them at Finance. On March 15th, you deferred the micro business because you wanted us to go back and revamp the forgivable loans and the liens, but you approved the nonprofit portion. From that, on March 31st, you approved the modified micro business program, and then staff went to work. So from March 31st, they revamped their applications, got those documents out in the community, met with community groups, walked people through the process of getting these applications done. The applications were open 2 different time frames, April 7th through May 13th and April 18th through May 6th. And then starting on May 14th, the staff that you see over there, as well as 2 other members from SCASID, were part of the committee to do just the check boxes. And we're here on June 7th. And so the reason I did it this way was for you to understand that the staff have worked from the day they hit the ground here to make this possible for you all. That is what I wanted to give an overview of. And then Mr. Davis has 1 slide, if you would, that was going to present to you the process that they used to actually preview the applications, if you want to.
Is that for this program out of the small business program?
You've got both. He's got both, but if your choice.
All right.
Process for either.
Go right ahead.
You want to start with nonprofit?
Nonprofit's fine. Yes, thank you.
Ms. Honeycutt, you got anything you want to add? Because I can only see your picture, not your hand.
No, sir. I'm good. Thanks.
Okay.
So this was the entire process for checking or for reviewing the nonprofit organizations. I think this is completely unheard of in terms of federal dollars in how easy we made it to get this money out the door. And it was just as simple as checking that they got their application in on time, looking at 4 documents, the IRS determination letter, Secretary of State registration, the 990 forms, which is what they need to be a legitimate nonprofit, and a current and prior year budget. We just wanted, and that was another thing that we collected to help them in going through their finances. We had to check the business location through the GIS to make sure that it was located in Charleston County. That was it. Then it was down to simply what they could provide in terms of documentation minus PPP. That was the entire process.
Question, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
Just a scenario to anyone. You have a barber who's 68 years old, not tech savvy, lost business for the 2 years, can't prove it, taxpayer, he met the 3 qualifications, the broad criteria. What do we do for him or her?
So the businesses were another program. And yes, we actually, the business program was just as simple. And actually, there were barbers that did apply because all they needed was their taxes. And that's what this body approved, their 2019 taxes. In fact, we didn't even make them have their 2020 taxes. It was their 2019 taxes and anything else they could provide. Literally anything else they could provide to show a loss.
Okay, and those folks were accepted?
Yes, we do. We have barbers that were accepted. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, yeah, I'll wait until we get to the next slide, the next scenario to go. So this is on the table. Let the record reflect that by the 16th, those that are eligible, staff is going to move forward with dispersing their funds, which they'll let us know who they are. Because it doesn't have to come back to us as far as for a vote, if this passes tonight. And then those that are not, they will be held on abeyance until they get with the proper documents.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you would, I cannot recall who made the motion, but there needs to be an official amendment made to the original motion to capture the actions that Ms. Durant has indicated necessary for her department.
I think Reverend Middleton made the motion and Ms. Johnson seconded the motion. So do you want those amendments, what I just described, added to your motion? Okay, do you accept it?
Accepted.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, so all in favor of that motion moving forward for the nonprofits, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Now, yes,
I would ask that you please inform Ms. Durant and her organization, we're not here to chastise her, or her
no.
organization. So please, let's make it
I
clear,
think Mr.
sir.
Rand understands that.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, yeah, well, staff understand, this is, like anything else. You have to, subject to questions and answers. Nobody is beating up anybody, nobody's making it personal. But if you have constituents that want answers, the only way we're gonna get it is through y'all. Yes, sir. So Mr. Darby may be a little loud sometimes as myself. As myself.
That's cold-blooded, man.
No, as myself too, because, my father was loud, so I therefore intended, I knew, sometimes people say, you're loud, but that doesn't mean someone is angry.
Excuse me, sir.
You just talk loud, you're passionate.
Excuse me, can you substitute, loud with passionate, please, sir?
Passionate, that's what I said,
I
passionate.
don't like loud, sir. I'm not loud, Mr. Price. So yes,
I can hear you, Mr. Darby,
All right,
loud and
thank you,
clear.
sir.
But, we're passionate. And when it comes to helping the underserved, I think we even become more passionate, So that's all we have. Fairness is all we ever asked, and that's all I ever want, for the least of the least, because these people, employ folks as well, and but anyway, let's move on to the next one, so that way, we can discuss this. Is there a motion? from
Move to
anybody?
approve.
Is there a second? We can discuss this. All right. Anybody wants a second for this call? Ms. Johnson, second. Now we open for discussion. Okay, so Mr. Davis, you can tell us, how did you arrive the way you at? And if anybody got any questions, because I think there's a list of certain people getting certain things, and I think, just from talking to Mr. Darby when he called me, and I'll just lay it out flat, he says, Mr. Pryor, I asked for, well, we started out with 50,000. It was dwindled down to 25,000 because of restrictions. And I think he was on the assumption that when these folks applied, everybody would get the same thing. Mr. Darby, if I'm wrong, you tell me I'm wrong.
correct, sir. I thought everybody would get 25,000, sir.
When he called me and proceeded to chew me out, and that's when I called y'all and say, explain to me what's going on, because it's not the size of the business, and sometimes it's not the loss, but it's these businesses that sometimes need a hand up instead of a handout. Okay, and so nobody knew what they would have made if it wasn't for the pandemic. And I think if we're going to be fair, one shouldn't oversee the other, because a big business making, you say it's $700,000 a year might need more than somebody, I guess, feel they need more than somebody making, $50,000 to $100,000 a year. So if we're going to be fair, I thought, and this is just my thinking, my thoughts, that everybody would get the same thing, because we reduced the number from 50 to 25. And I never thought it would be based on whatever they lost. So if that's not a federal requirement, I was told by you, Mr. Davis, that's not the federal criteria, correct?
Correct, but then now I want to remind you that conversation took place after the applications closed. So the problem with that is, when you're doing a federal procurement, it's about changing something that would have changed who applied. So had we applied that from the very beginning, we wouldn't have had a problem. And that's what I was thinking when we had that conversation. The issue is applications had already closed, and it would affect who would have applied in the first place.
All right, so can this be amended, number one? And number two, we put, I think, $2.5 million aside for this program.
$2 million, sir.
$2 million. So if everybody gets 25, we're looking at what? About $800,000 or so? So you still leave about $1.2 million to go back and revisit for those that didn't, correct?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, please.
You said the application process was different. So if this was to be amended to say everybody gets the same thing, that's still going to leave $1.2 million to go back for those who you said that didn't meet the requirements, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, so if that's correct, then that solves the problem of you saying that the application process was changed.
Well, no, wait a minute. I don't think so. It does solve that problem. The other issue is when we were walking through the ARPA guidelines, the issue is what we were measuring. That is what we have to report to the federal government. What are you measuring? Measuring loss was an easy one. That's why we did it that way. We didn't have to track down how they were spending the money. We didn't have to follow them around. We didn't have to do any of that. It was so we could tell the federal government we were measuring what was lost, and the program would have been done, and we could move on to the second phase. That was how this was intended. If we say everyone gets $25,000, then the problem I have on the back end, and the problem I have on the back end is, what do I tell the federal government that we're measuring? That's the issue we've been trying to work through as a staff. No one has ever said no. What we said was, can we work through this to meet the federal guidelines and stay in compliance with a federal audit?
See, I'm confused now because I sat right here and listened when Mr. Darby said 50, and y'all said it's a stricter guidelines, okay? And then when it came up, the 25,000, that means that those guidelines, you said that was in the federal, go away. So if the guidelines went away, if this is a county policy,
it doesn't make it go away. It changes what we have to measure. It makes it easier when we keep the amount 25,000 and below.
That's correct. I think we're splitting hairs here. And my second question is, are we under the same scrutiny as other municipalities like cities and towns and other counties that you read about and how they use their money to help those that were in? I think the town of Columbia, if I'm not mistaken, help small business by giving them, I think everybody's $10,000 or $15,000. So I'm just more confused now than I was when I walked into this chamber.
We can still do exactly what you said. The issue is we would have to comply on the back end. We weren't staffed up to do that in the beginning. We can certainly do whatever you instruct us to do.
Right.
Not only can we will do it the right way. So yes, when you talk about these other towns that spent money, most of them had mechanisms in place, at least all the ones that I know of. They had mechanisms in place where they could audit the people receiving the money and they could track it. We weren't set up for that. So we tried to do the easiest thing that we could do for these businesses. And we have mechanisms in place to make sure that these businesses qualify for the next round. We've gone to churches. We have churches that we are under contract with, who will take these applications, who will help people fill them out, who will make sure that they have the proper documentation. They'll scan their documents for them. There are 6 churches that we contacted. There are 3 of them, I believe, that we are under contract with as of now. We're still working on the other 3, and I've asked for requests for other churches to be involved in the process. So we are looking at every way we can to help these businesses and stay in compliance with federal guidelines.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Davis, but here again, I haven't got an answer to changing the numbers. Will that still keep us in compliance? Yes or no?
We've discussed this at length. I can't say yes or no. I don't know how. We have been from the beginning trying to figure out how do we do this and stay in compliance with federal guidelines. I still don't have an answer to that. We will continue working on it if that's what this body wants to do. I have no problem with that.
I guess my church is not eligible, and we sent people to the initial meetings, to be a part of whatever the county is doing. I think that when we're looking at partners, we need to, be deliberate.
Yes, I'm almost positive your church was contacted. I can't guarantee that. I'm almost positive because we went around to different departments in this building and asked folks for suggestions about who we should contact and who should be a part of this process. Now, some of the churches, we just weren't fast enough at getting around to them. Pastors are a little difficult to get a hold of sometimes, but we actually went to a number of churches. There's a longer list that we have. We started with the 6 because they had nonprofit organizations in place, and they had already done business with the county or some other organization where we could do the vetting process easy. This is only the very first tranche of money. We would absolutely love to get your church involved and every other church that wants to be involved. But we are a staff of 7 people, and we have been combing this county up and down, literally from one end to the other, trying to get in touch with every single organization that wants funds from the county.
Mr. Darby,
It just seems to me that
speaking to the mic.
I just rather be told up front what we can do, what we can't do, as opposed to us being defensive. Because when I asked originally for the $50,000 to be given to these businesses, that's too much because it's going to be federal guidelines. And you said
That's not what we said.
Let him finish, Mr.
Sir,
Davis.
did we not? Did I not ask for 50,000? And then you said about there'll be federal restrictions, and you reduced it to 25. I was opposed to that, but you said since the restrictions be thrown out the window in substance, we would go 25, and that was my point. So I was told that the businesses would get $25,000. That's what I was told. So if that weren't the case, just say, hey, Darby, we can't do it like that, as opposed to my thinking that, particularly when I originally asked for the 50 and it was reduced to 25. I'm thinking everything is clear now. That's all, Mr. Davis. I'm not.
So, sir,
Yes, sir.
And I don't believe I have ever had that conversation that took it from 50 to 25. I was part of a conversation in which
We
it was
voted
said
on
that
it. We voted on it, Mr. Davis. The body voted on it.
Daryl, let me have.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Darby, there was a conversation in council about that, and I believe it was me that answered the question that the regulations change when you go to 50,000. That was the distinction. And it's not that we won't do a program that includes 50,000, but again, we were trying to make it super easy for businesses to get it. And we didn't want to have businesses submit even more documents. Clearly, even the ones we've had have been a little difficult.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll tell you, the biggest thing we want to do with the next round of money is to get to the businesses that Mr. Davis is describing that don't have the documents. We want to build the capacity. That's our goal.
Ms. Durant and Mr. Davis, all I'm saying is, if it were said from 50,000 to 25,000, and if it didn't work, just simply say it didn't work like that, as opposed to having me to think that the $25,000 is what we agreed upon and what we voted on as a body. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, Mr. Davis.
That's on me.
That's all I'm saying, sir.
Probably if you want to,
No,
make
that's it,
an
sir.
amendment, you feel free to do so, and if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I was of the same opinion too, and I just it looks like we're on the 5-yard line, but now they move the ball back to the 50-yard line, and I'm not blaming, putting no cast on
Well,
nobody.
Mr.
Y'all
Pro, I'm
know
not going to question the sagacity and financial wisdom of Mr. Durant or Ms. Davis, or Mr. Davis. I think they're trying to do what's best for the county as a whole. I just think that communication is at a loss, sir. I think that's where we are.
Yeah.
So whatever you suggest, sir, that's what I do.
And Mr. Rand, just a question. So when you say law, so what if these people recover? That's money they already spent, okay? So I was thinking that, when we do this, that would give them some type of infusion to keep them going. Because what we're giving them is money they already spent, okay? PPE people got money to infuse in their business to keep them going. So we're really not giving these people anything to keep them going. All we're saying is I'm giving you back what you spent. So I thought the program would help them. If somebody spent $20,000 and got an extra $5,000, that would help them. Number one, it's hard trying to find somebody to get employed right now. So you'd have to have pay incentives to do that. Gas prices is going through the roof, okay? And, people are just not wanting to do anything. So if they don't have the funding to give these people incentives, you put them right back where they've been at. So that's what I thought we were trying to do. And that's was our focus. Not only me, but I think everybody's focus. So you weren't trying to give them a handout. You were trying to give them a handout, but just like the airlines, okay? They received money to keep flying so they could stay in business after the pandemic. So that's all I want to see these small people do because, I was a small business person. I ran the business for many, many years, and I know what it is to sometimes live paycheck to paycheck. Everybody else get paid, and you got to wait on yours. But thank God I survived. So that's all I was trying to do and want to see happen. Let's help these people move to the next level. That's all. And for anybody to think it's a handout, are these people getting something free? Shame on you, because that's not what we intended. So my purpose is to help these people get to the next level and give them what they already spent, but then give them a boost in the arm to stay in business. So if that's something we can do with this money, that's what I want to see. I don't want to send anything back to the feds because the money was intended to help people, not send it back to federal government. That's all. So.
Chairman, was there a motion or?
There's already been a motion. But if there's no amendment and everybody's satisfied the way it is.
Discussion? Are we still in discussion?
Yes, sir, we're still in discussion.
Might I be recognized?
Of course, Mr. Moody.
Thank you for recognizing me, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hanson.
Miss Ham, what do the ARPA guidelines say about establishing protocols, procedures, procurement, and then following them?
So it's my understanding that the ARPA guidelines are a bit less restrictive than your typical federal guidelines, but it does reference the federal guidelines. What the ARPA guidelines indicate is that you are to set a process and to follow that process. What the ARPA guidelines do not contemplate is a different decision by council than whatever the staff recommends. That will be a council-related action, and of course, council would be responsible for, any risk involved in that decision.
So every time we've got free money campaign going on, come get it. We say, let's let staff develop a process, develop a program. We're going to follow that program. We're going to let them build it out, and then it'll be up to council whether we take their recommendations. Okay?
Absolutely.
So on March 25th, we approved a process. Very onerous. 3 things to do, and then a couple eligible criteria. So if we deviate, Ms. Alton, I'm coming to you, if we deviate from the process and start handing out more money than our process says we should, what are our auditors going to do? What are our rating agencies going to do to us? Especially if we have to turn around and refund that money back from the general fund.
So part of what made us AAA eligible from the 3 rating agencies are the county's financial policies that county council passed. The financial policies say that we're going to follow federal, state laws and any other laws that apply to us. We have been told by the Government Finance Officers Association about a year ago that the rating agencies are paying particularly close attention to what the counties are doing with the ARPA money. This is a big infusion of money, and the rating agencies are going to want to know that we are using these funds in the appropriate way. One of the appropriate ways to use money is to follow the guidelines that have been developed for each piece of the funds. As Ms. Ham said, the Relief Act lays out that there is to be set of procedures and processes for each set of money that we distribute, and that we are intended to follow them. So I can't definitively say what the rating agencies are going to do because I can't read their minds, but I do know that the next time we borrow money, we are going to be asked about what we're doing with the ARPA funding.
And so what if we got downgraded because of our behavior?
If we were downgraded, we would have to go back and take a look at our capital improvement plan and our debt service plan. Right now, the 5-year plan that Mr. Guile presented to you took into account interest rates that were at a AAA rating. If we got downgraded to some other rating, we're going to have to re-review it based on the interest rates that we can get at a lower rating.
I agree, Mr. Darby, with you about races. This is open to anybody and everybody. It really should be. But by having a process in place, there's a formulaic, easy to explain, easy to track. Everybody was treated the same process that, as a bean counter myself, I think auditors would probably like. But at some point, this council too has to take some responsibility about explaining it to our constituents, because it's in the sheets. We approved it. It presumes we've read it and we have approved it. So it's right there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly on that same point want to make certain that we are treating apples and with apples, because when we were making ourselves whole as a county with ARPA funds and the boat landings came back and all of these other things, and so we didn't have any discussion as to whether or not, we were appropriately, applying the ARPA funds, as it related to those things. And so I just want to make certain that when we have ratings conversations and, credit worthiness, et cetera, that it applies across the board.
Thank you, sir. And that's an excellent point, because anything we do with the money is subject to scrutiny. Okay? And so, just like lost revenue, I was going to say too, maybe we should have moved the money into lost revenue, then that would take off all the restrictions. So maybe the next time, that would be just take off and move it to lost revenue, and then that takes off the restrictions. Because I certainly, the bonding process, Corinne, you and I and Mr. Dawson and Keith, we spent, 3 days and 2 nights to get the AAA. Because when I became chair, we only had a AA plus. And that wasn't satisfactory to me, so we went up and we got the AAA bond rating, which has saved us millions of dollars down throughout the years. And so me, for one, would never jeopardize that process, because I understand the process and I know the process. And I think some of the other council members, Mr. Moody, you in the finance, I think you know it too. But I think what we're doing is we're making assumptions, and, they could come in and audit us for anything. They could say, the money you did on that road over there, the money you did on that piping issue over there on Glenn McConnell, we didn't think that was appropriate. Well, we already spent the money, so what do we tell our taxpayers then? So it could be an either or balance. So all I like is fairness, that's all. But, based on what has been made, if nobody's gonna make no change, let's just move on. So all in favor of the motion signify.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. We're voting to move ahead with the program as it's been.
What they have before, I said.
Right. So what we had in here in the guidelines, okay, that we approved on March 24th. Is that correct?
Is this staff recommendation?
Mr. Darby, did you make an amendment?
So is Mr. Sass' question is,
I'm so lost.
this sheet right here meets all the requirements?
Yes, sir.
That's his question.
Mr. Sass, are you referring to the memo that made the changes that council asked us to go back and modify the yellow sheet slightly to remove the forgivable loans and the liens?
Yes, ma'am. It was
On March 24th, the memo?
Yes, ma'am.
So the program was approved in 2 parts. It was approved at finance on the yellow sheet that you all considered on March 10th. You approved that. At council on the 15th, you asked staff to go back and work on a program that would address the forgivable loans and liens.
Right.
And on March 24th, we came back and made some changes to the program and took away and modified the yellow sheet to include the request of council.
Correct.
So the program that was reviewed by the committee of staff and SCASID, based on their report, meets that. Now, the contingency, much like you did with the nonprofit, is that the normal process that I would follow to sign off on your yellow sheet would be to do an audit to ensure that everything that the staff did, they didn't make any mistakes. They're human. So there's a second level of review to ensure that we are presenting to council something that is true and whole.
And that's a normal process.
That's normal. That's very normal.
Right.
The only thing that changed, quite frankly, is I probably needed a little sleep between Thursday and Tuesday. I mean, because just with the time crunch, I was unable, it's on me. I was unable to do what I would normally do to present to council that I am attesting to what my department has done.
Thank you.
All this will be ready by the 16th.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so these people that didn't meet the 25,000, criteria, will they be able to apply for the second?
Yes.
Yes, we already have talked about a couple different things.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I'm, please, public, please forgive me for this ongoing. So are we talking the minimum of the 25,000 or not? Are we giving according to, which one is it?
Well, that's your place. If somebody makes a motion, that's up to them.
No, I'm sticking with the 25 minimum, sir. I'm not changing anything.
So would you like to make a motion to deviate from what they recommend here, to give these, how many people on there? 23 or whatever, I haven't counted, 25,000 versus what they're getting now?
I don't have the sheet, sir.
Here it is.
Here it is, sir. You can have mine. So what I'm saying is, count the number of people on there.
It's 33. It's 33.
There's 33 people on that list. So is your amendment to have all 33 get 25,000, or you just want to leave the sheet the way it is and then let them apply in the second round? Those who didn't receive 25,000.
Sir, based upon the majority of this council, we voted for $25,000. And that's what I'm gonna stick with, sir.
All right, so
And if they
who
want to vote that down, let them vote it down, sir.
made the motion?
I did.
So are you going to amend?
Absolutely.
Are you seconding his motion, his amendment?
I'm going to second it, but I need to get some
All right, go ahead,
clarification.
then. Now we're back into Ms. Johnson.
No, just ask something here. So I thought we were saying that we were going to make the limit 25,000 so that we can get everybody on the list that was approved. And then when he comes back to the second round, those people that were already on the list that got less than 25,000 would be contacted to apply for the rest.
That is correct.
So this motion that you're talking about changing to now would supersede what?
Yes.
It would just make everybody 25,000 whether they qualify or not?
No.
Yes, it would.
No. If they made the three criterias.
That the council said.
Right. But now, some lost more than that. I guess this was lost revenue you're talking about?
Yes, sir. The microbusiness was based on a comparison of loss prior to the pandemic and then when they submitted the next tax return.
Reverend Middleton, may I ask you this, sir? So, based on what they're saying that these businesses can come back that got less than 25, would you want to just let it go and then these people apply in the second round? But if you still want your motion, I don't have a problem. That's up to you.
Let me ask this question. What happens when they apply in the second round and they get nothing?
But we should deal with it at that time, I think. Because right now, we want to hurry and get people the money who is qualified.
Yeah, well, they're going to get it. Yeah.
You want that released now?
Even what Reverend Middleton is saying is the 25 would be released to everybody. But anyway, Mr. Wehrman.
No, I think I know where we're at. I'd prefer Ms. Johnson's approach, but I think I've clarified where we're at.
I don't understand. You.
So maybe I do need to clarify. So
Yeah.
my understanding is there is potentially an amendment on the table to just bump all of these numbers that are currently there up to 25.
Correct.
I have heard some concerns from, and maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but I have heard concerns from our legal department and the folks administering this that is not in fact what we approved back in whenever it was March or April, and that has some attendant concerns. I also think I'm hearing from staff that we can in fact do this sort of policy shift where it's not necessarily about lost revenue, it's more about sort of an infusion of funds more generally that would maybe be a flat fee. But in fact, they're not comfortable with doing that on the current review of what we've done. I am happy to get the money that we have sort of approved and processed out now and then ask them to go back and do whatever magic they work to find out how we would in fact document these flat fee infusions. I'm fine with that policy shift, but that's what I would be willing to support. If that's on the table, I'll vote for it. Is that in fact on the table?
No.
Okay.
So, Reverend Middleton, do you want to continue?
Johnson accept the amendment.
Yeah, she accepted the amendment.
I just
One question, sir. Here's what I don't understand. We have a real estate company, 25,000. We have a financial company, 25,000. We have a bakery, 25,000. When it comes down to those more closer to the ground, they don't get it. That would be my question. So what was that criteria for some to get $260? $2,500. That's what I don't understand. Perhaps you all can take behind closed doors or something, because I don't see the equity in that. Again, behind closed doors, that's fine. We don't have the time now, but I would have the question about that. Why some and why not all? Excuse me, sir. So you going? What's your motion, sir? To everybody 25 grand? Yes, sir.
Support.
Okay. Okay, so if we go with the motion of giving everybody 25,000, I still need to be clear on this. What are we going to be changing the process of how we qualify? When we consider the 25,000 for everybody, what is going to be the criteria? It's not going to be the reimbursement anymore.
Ms. Johnson, the reimbursement was for the nonprofit, so that was reimbursement for expenses. For the micro business, it was based solely on their tax returns, what their income was in one year compared to the next, and the loss is what you would see on this spreadsheet. So this represents what they earned before the pandemic in income, and then what they earned in the next tax return, and then the difference between the two is what this number is.
So I understand that part. So if a person had lost only $6,000, that's all, according to what you're saying.
Yes, ma'am.
That they would be getting, but that is not what the motion is right here.
Correct.
The motion is saying, give everybody 25, so I'm saying, how are you going to be able to explain that process for going to the 25,000? Are you going to be still looking at how we're going to do that? Or we don't need to have that question answered? I mean, because the council is just saying we're going with 25,000.
Please.
May I just really quickly, I think that the way that the standards are written requires there to be an approved process and requires staff to follow that process. Your decision won't change the process. What it will change is how they report back to the federal government. So it's not a change in the process. That has been established and followed. Those guidelines have been met. It's what your decision is now is what's on the table. Staff has met the requirements of the guidelines pursuant to ARPA and has explained to you kind of how they operate usually within the guidelines of the Code of Federal Regulations and what that process typically looks like with the report back to the federal government.
So let me ask this question. Are we obligated to report back to the federal government, or are we just wait on an audit? Because I keep hearing people saying report to the federal government. Do they require us to report?
Yes,
or we
sir.
Just hope, all right.
We have
All right, that's all I need
compliance.
to know. Do we require you to report this? That's all I need to know.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Also, I would like to ask on those same lines, or Mr.
I'm
Swears,
sorry.
you can-
Let me go to Mr. Swears first. Mr. Swears.
Thank you. I've been listening to this quietly. Staff has created a defendable.
Speak into the mic.
Staff has created a defendable process. And what we are considering right now is for those folks that couldn't provide tax returns showing they lost a certain amount of money, we're going to give them more than that regardless. If they can only show that in their tax returns that they lost $5,000, we're going to ignore that. We're going to give them $25,000 anyway. If they can show they lost $24,000, we're going to give them $25,000. If they can show they lost Somebody said $260 somebody was getting back. If they can only show they lost $260, we're going to give them $25,000. There's just something terribly inequitable about that. I think staff has created a defendable process, and I think we really are sticking our necks out if we deviate from that at this point. Staff has even said perhaps they can find more creative ways in the future to help some folks that many of them desperately need help. But this is also, I mean, the program needs to be defendable. And I think what we are going to do is make it not defendable.
You done, Mr. Swears? All right, Reverend Middleton.
Chair, this is for Ms. Ham. So based on what you just said a minute ago, they have met the threshold of the criteria that they have set by following whatever process. Would that then negate the process by upping the amount to 25,000, or is the process still protected?
So that's the $1 million question, Reverend Middleton. To be honest, it's very unclear with regards, like I said earlier, the ARPA guidelines do not contemplate a decision made by the decision-making body, the council, versus the staff recommendation. That what it does reference is your Code of Federal Regulations, which is typically what they operate under for their grant programs. And pursuant to those particular regulations, the guidelines are usually that you shouldn't change the procurement process.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jenny, but it's okay.
Yeah,
And then let me go to Ms. Honeycutt. Then I come back to Ms. Johnson.
While I don't have a vote tonight, I did just want to weigh in, having like Mr. Schweers listen to this entire debate. It seems absolutely ludicrous that we would ignore the recommendation of our staff here. I can't imagine a scenario where it makes sense to give someone who can only demonstrate $250 and lost $25,000. That seems like an absolute abuse of this process. If I were there to vote, I would vote against it. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, send it back.
Now, Ms. Johnson.
I would be more comfortable with us going with the first recommendation, which is to do the first round of the reimbursement and then come back the second time with another process.
Chair, if she's saying that, if Ms. Durant, is saying that they will be fully ready on the 16th, let them come back on the 16th.
May I clarify? My point was I would be fully ready to assert that I have checked what staff has recommended and can sign off that this recommendation is legit.
This information will be exactly the same, even still?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then, but staff is already working on a program to add other opportunities to businesses, to include those that would not have even qualified on the first round.
Call the question, Chairman.
Hold on just a minute, sir. As much as I hate to delay this process any longer, so my question is, how much time would it take for y'all to go back and accomplish what Mr. Darby, Reverend Middleton, and myself is asking? A process that can, meet the requirements that we're asking for. That's my question. And so I guess you should have an answer because you said you got a second round coming. So if you already got a second round established, it should be an easy answer. But I'll let you answer.
You're asking me when we can come back with the program that addresses what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
With a different program?
A different, whatever they want to do, then I guess to help, folks with cash in their business, yeah.
I would say tonight we would take approximately 2 to 3 weeks to have an application up on the website that people can start filling out, and then it's just a matter of time of how we leave that up. I will also say that we are struggling with reaching businesses in neighborhoods that need it. We don't have staff that can hit the streets. Last time we paid someone to actually go out and contact these businesses, that is the only outstanding question out there is we know we're not reaching the businesses that need us most. So we would ask for some time, and we can make it a rolling process if you would like. So people don't have to wait for the whole process. We can bring them to you in batches if that's what you want to do. But we know for a fact we're not reaching the businesses that need us most. We want to do that, so we want some time to go out into these neighborhoods, especially into the rural areas, and to encourage businesses to apply.
Okay, so Reverend Milton, may I ask you and Mr. Darby these people that are on the list right now,
He's made the change, sir. He said so.
okay, so you want to go with this list that they have now, and then allow them to come back with a different change that reduces some of these requirements? Is that what you're saying? And those that didn't get the 25 can reapply? Okay.
I just want to say, in conclusion, those who appear to be so frugal in this matter right here, about a measly $25,000, I hope you're just as frugal when we have to pay $287 million for a mile and 526. Thank you.
Okay, so you going with the original motion, that's staff recommendation?
So that means I have to withdraw.
No, yeah, hold on a minute. He withdraw, you withdraw. The original motion is to go with staff recommendation. So that's his motion, are you still second?
Yes.
All right. All in favor of the original motion?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I hate to interrupt. I'm so sorry. But I just want to make sure that you capture the amendment as Ms. Durant has asked with regards to making sure that the files are complete before they disperse.
Well, of course, it's just ludicrous to ask us not to do any. I don't think we need to tell her to do that. She knows to do that. But what I'm saying is those that are qualified, I don't want to hold them up. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, but if they don't qualify, then they don't get dispersed.
Yes,
So I don't think anybody is asking her to do that. Okay. So that's the original motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Let me go on record. So you'll know, Mr. Rand will know, there won't be no changes. You said that those folks that didn't qualify to meet the first, y'all are going to make sure they qualify in the second round. So I don't want to come back here and you say, well, these people got money the first time, they can't come the second time. So I'm gonna hold y'all to the word. It's on tape, it's on record.
So you're saying that those who, wait a minute, let me be very clear about what you're saying. They will not be ineligible based on the fact that they got money this time. No, that I can say. They will not be ineligible based on the fact that they got money this time.
Yes, but I don't want them to get no more than the 25 that we were asking. Okay, so if somebody get 12 this round and they qualify for 13 the next round, that's all they get. They don't get another 25. Y'all want to change, y'all, but I just want something to come back, and I want everything.
So, Mr. Chair,
Okay, Matt, I'm sorry.
may I
Hold
say
on.
this?
Hold on. So that's all I'm asking.
Just to be clear, though, we never intended to say that a business in Charleston County couldn't get more than 25,000.
Okay,
the
that's
way the
fine.
program is set up, we would like to see some of these businesses that are trying to grow to actually get more money. This was all about the process. This was only about the process.
And when the process comes back, I want y'all to sit me down and put it in writing in layman's terms so I can understand as well as everybody else, so it won't be no miscommunication.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure that I'm understanding.
Yes, sir.
Because just like the business that, qualified for $260, based on my understanding, they will not be eligible necessarily for another $14,740, or will they be?
Can I ask if you would allow staff, if council chooses to adopt what has been presented, let us come back on the 16th with some other options that will address these businesses, and in a couple weeks after that, the next bigger
You got it.
program.
All right.
Okay.
That's good.
If we could do that.
All right, let's move on to the next item. Thank you so much. But this is important. It deserves discussion. So now staff knows which direction that council wants to go. Okay, so that concludes our Finance Committee agenda. Now we're going to move into public comments. But we have, how many people signed up? 6?
Yes.
6 people. I want to give them 3 minutes apiece tonight versus 2. So you can come up, state your name and address as she call you, and we'll move on. So can you put 3 minutes up on there? 2 minutes
Yeah, I'll have to just start it over again with 1
I
minute.
can control
Yeah.
it. Okay. All right. Who's the first person?
Mr. Bryant.
Anthony G. Bryant. I already got your address. Start speaking.
Thank you, bro.
Birthday.
Thank you.
Mr. Bryant?
Birthday.
Appreciate it. I mean, y'all doing an outstanding job. I mean, you dealt with the Great Recession, you dealt with the pandemic. I mean, what more can we ask of our council? I think we're not looking at each other and saying we're all imperfect. And, what do you expect from a perfect people? Perfection. So what I'm here tonight to talk about basically is a state law passed 3050 regarding improvements in public safety. In terms of Legislative Procedure Act, federally, you have a judicial review process. Saw the FBI in here 2 weeks before, but a young man in our community in Charleston County was wrongfully accused of something he did not do and could have got the electric chair. Okay, like George Stinney got when he was 14 years old. Now, in the blanketed assertion with this issue of the Second Amendment, the ATF has not had an administrator for 7 years. Yes, we have people talking about this issue. Who's it going to affect? This summer, poor by and large, and I'm not apologetically about my position as far as my race and my race consciousness. I'm not knocking anybody else's races, whatever they're about, but I'm about what I'm about. And I'm trying to let mitigating my experiences for anybody else's. I'm not going to do that for nobody. The experience for African American men in this county this summer will be very dire because there's a blanket assertion that they're criminals. And as an African American man, I will not allow anybody to get on television without any level of recourse telling them that's retaliatory. They'll do their civil liberties like anybody else. So we're not going to talk about blanket assertions any longer in this county, but appointed officials. Unelected, our sheriff's elected. Say what she wants to say. But you're an appointed official, you can't say that. Go to the ATF. The federal government has been derelict for many, many years in our community in terms of lawsuits. In terms of the fact of 40% of the state can't even afford an attorney. 40% of the state is poor, and they can't afford legal counsel, and they can't afford an accountant. So how can they even reach the criteria necessary to participate in anything in this county without money?
Go ahead, sir. Maybe I need to let you work for them, Mr. Bryant.
Next is Rick Voigt, followed by Mary Neal Burkall.
Hi, my name is Rick Voigt. I live at 161 River Breeze Drive, West Ashley, Charleston, South Carolina. I'm also Vice President of the HOA Board of the Waterway South community, a community that would be directly impacted if you choose to expand I-526. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in front of the council and community. Understanding that the I-526 extension is not specifically on the docket for this evening, however, with the recent move to separate the extension into two parts, perhaps to overshadow the immense expense of this decades-old idea that has been defeated multiple times, I felt it important to come and speak with you. My business and travel activities do not allow me to be in Charleston as much as I wish. However, my daughter became a major in the U.S. Air Force this weekend at the Air Force Base. To provide the context to my thoughts and advice to Charleston leaders, I'm fortunate to own a business that allows me to travel a lot. In fact, my van, my nicely appointed conversion van, is currently in the Sacramento airport as I flew back for this event. Why is this relevant? I've driven 6 times coast to coast to coast. I've worked and lived and seen a lot of America, been to all 50 states, have spent time in all of the largest, many medium, and quite a few of the smallest cities in our nation. An observation is that as a nation, we develop cities in beautiful locations, and due to growth and overcrowding, we've ruined much of what has brought us to these places in the first place. Charleston is a unique place. We have a beautiful environment, a global travel gem, and due to this, we attract many of the best and brightest individuals, businesses, and tourists. Spending billions of dollars on decades-old ideas and needs versus spending on today's and tomorrow's needs and desires does not make sense. Charleston faces more important projects and expenditures.
Go ahead. I'll give you to finish up. Go ahead. A few more minutes.
Charleston faces more important projects and expenditures than another big road. Transportation systems and infrastructures to support today's and tomorrow's needs, improving centuries-old barriers and life-sustaining water infrastructure, and ultimately continuing to create an attracting city that is a U.S. and global treasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Neal Brokaw, Luann Rosenwig.
Try to get my clock working here. Let's see.
Good evening. My name is Mary Neal Burkhall. I am a member of the Church of the Holy Communion at the corner of Ashley and Cannon, and my house is at 97 Chadwick Drive. I'm here tonight in support of the funding for a housing trust fund. We're reading and hearing all over the news that inflation is costing households nearly $300 more a month, and we're feeling that inflation personally in our lives. For some of us, this has meant eating at restaurants less often or cutting back on the entertainment. But for the vast majority of the community, the cost is much more serious. It means skipping meals during the week or not taking our meds quite as often. And if those things don't shave off enough cost, then homelessness becomes a real possibility. We know that this council does not control inflation, but you do control our tax dollars, and you do control where the ARPA fund is spending. Directing that fund toward the building of affordable housing has the potential to save lives in the long run, to restore dignity to families, to allow parents to drop that second job to spend more time with their children. We ask that you are generous in your allocation toward housing that is affordable. Send a message to the hard-working community of Charleston County that you've heard their cries for help. We've been asking for a minimum of $10 million for a housing trust fund. Councilman Darby challenged you and us that $20 million is needed. We agree, and we stand in support of this council pursuing serious dollars to tackle a very serious problem. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, ma'am.
Luann Rosenwig, Carla Pinkney, Pearl Askew.
Hello, I'm Luann Rosenzweig. I live at 365 Sugarcane Way in Mount Pleasant. I'm here again tonight. You've seen me before. I'm in support of funding for a housing trust fund. As co-president of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, I hear many stories from our members about them having to add second jobs to make ends meet or having to live with multiple roommates just to help with housing costs. As I thought about the idea of people working more than one job, I asked myself, don't people have the right to rest? For those of us of Christian and Jewish faith, one of the first stories we learn from our sacred text is that once God finished creating the world, creating humans, God rested. Rest was so important to God and to those responsible for translating Scripture that all these years later, that part of the story is still here. Taking a Sabbath was a serious commandment, and probably most of us in this room can tell you the day or days of the week that they rest. Yet we have neighbors, friends, family members who have to work and work and work some more just to be able to afford housing. And their times for rest diminish every day. People have the right to rest. Take a bold step to support the building of affordable homes. Create a future that allows our working families to rest. Please vote yes for affordable housing. Please vote yes for working families to rest. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Next.
Carla Pinckney.
Good evening. On behalf of the 10 Mile community, I stand here tonight to request your support once again to approve our request to be granted Historic Preservation District status. As we've stated at previous Charleston County Council meetings, our community is a diverse settlement community with a wealth of history. Like the Phillip community and the Beefield community, who have both successfully obtained this Historic Preservation District status, we would like to preserve our history and the bonds that have been passed down from generation to generation. Those who are here tonight in support of this request, can you please stand at this time? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And Miss Askew.
Let's ask you,
Hey, how are you guys doing?
how you doing?
Good. Pearl B. Askew, 977 Gadsdenville Road. That was a vigorous discussion. I'm glad I came to hear it, really. I learned a lot. That said, I want to say thank you again to the staff and to council, the entire council, and to the residents of the 10 Mile community and the other settlement community to support us with this effort. And I want to say something positive about the news. Thanks to Channel 5 for supporting the historical preservation information and just giving the 10 Mile community a shout out. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's it. Thank you, Ms. Askew. It's always good to see you. So now, we're going to move into our regularly scheduled county council meeting where I'm going to ask Mr. Werman to lead us in a prayer tonight, and I'm going to ask Mr. Tootin to lead us in the pledge. Mr. Werman. Reverend Werman.
Lord, we thank you for bringing us together to do the work for this county. We pray that we make wise and just decisions tonight and moving forward. In your name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, at this time, Ms. Salisbury, Freedom of Information Act, item number 1.
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meeting was posted and agendas were distributed to news media and persons requesting notification.
Item number 2. Minutes of
Both items.
moved and seconded, moved by Mr. Moody and seconded by Reverend Middleton. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, might I just note and let me thank Ms. Ham and Ms. Salisbury on last Thursday, which is included in some of these minutes that are included. I abstained from voting for the budget, but wanted to note that there was no conflict. I'd simply intended to state that I abstained because I was waiting to meet with county staff relative to the budget, and Mr. Tootin, the entire DCA's staff from our county, to include Ms. Altenheim and Mr. Giles. We had a very robust budget discussion, and I appreciate them having that. They did extend that opportunity several times prior, but my schedule did not permit, and they did loop me back in today. So thank you all for doing that, and I fully support the budget, but I negated to mention when I abstained, which I should not have abstained, that I was doing so waiting for that meeting, and that was the only reason that I did so.
Let the records reflect that
Yes.
his abstention was he was waiting on the meeting. Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All opposed, ayes have it. Okay, third readings, Ms. Salisbury, item A.
An ordinance to dissolve the Allendale Consolidated Fire District Advisory Board and other matters related thereto. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
The ordinance passes third reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
All right, 3B.
An ordinance authorizing the amendment of a fee agreement among Charleston County, South Carolina, Cummins Incorporated, Patillo Lumber Company, and Palmetto Property LLC, collectively the parties, and the execution and delivery of an amended and restated fee agreement by and among the parties to include an additional site under the FELO agreement and to provide for certain special source revenue or infrastructure credits and other matters relating thereto. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
The ordinance passes third reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
Item 4 is A through H ordinances, so I'm going to let Ms. Salisbury take them one at a time.
Yes, sir. An ordinance rezoning the real property located at 3347 Ladson Road, parcel identification number 3900000076, from the Community Commercial CC District to the General Office GO Zoning District. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
The ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent. Item B is an ordinance amending the Kiowa River Plan Development Zoning District PD 143B of the Kiowa River Development Agreement, Johns Island, South Carolina, by and among Kiowa River Investment LLC and Charleston County, South Carolina. Mr. Darby?
Aye. Ma'am. I'm sorry. Forgive me, ma'am. Oh, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so very much, ma'am.
Call Mr. Darby name again.
Mr. Darby?
Nay.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Nay.
Mr. Moody? Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
The ordinance passes second reading with 6 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 absent. And then an ordinance amending the Kiowa River Development Agreement, Johns Island, South Carolina, by and among Kiowa River Investment LLC and Charleston County, South Carolina. Mr. Darby?
Nay.
Ms. Honeycutt.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Ms.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're
Correct.
good.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Nay.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
The ordinance passes second reading with 6 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 absent. Then item D, an ordinance designating the 10-mile community located in the East Cooper area of the unincorporated Charleston County as a historic district on the Charleston County Historic Designation List with the right to amend up to third reading. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass? Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent. And then we have an ordinance providing for the levy of taxes for corporate purposes of Charleston County for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, hereinafter referred to as fiscal year 2023, making appropriations from the general fund and other funds of Charleston County for such purposes, and further providing for the levy of taxes for corporate purposes of Charleston County, including the Onondaga-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District, East Cooper Fire District, Northern Charleston County Fire District, West St. Andrews Fire District, and Trident Technical College for fiscal year 2023, providing for appropriations from such special funds created for the purposes of the Onondaga-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District, East Cooper Fire District, Northern Charleston County Fire District, West St. Andrews Fire District, and Trident Technical College. In order to supply the necessary functions of the units, providing for budget control of the appropriations by the Charleston County Council and the county administrator, making provisions for the fiscal affairs of Charleston County, and providing for the issuance of tax anticipation notes in an amount up to $25 million for Charleston County and up to $400,000 for the Onondaga-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Mr. Middleton?
I have a little speech, and I know we've been kind of moving very long tonight, but I wanted to say that I'm voting for this budget, but I certainly still maintain my concern about certain general fund perpetual, sort of organizational gifts. And I would like for us to keep that before us and refer it back to the appropriate process so that those persons, may be able to be vetted through the community, whatever that fund would be. But I vote yes, but I definitely cannot every year see the same organizations receiving in excess of whatever those funds are in every county budget. Aye.
Thank you, Reverend. Duly noted. Take your time.
Yes, sir. Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent. Then we have an ordinance relating to the imposition of annual solid waste recycling and disposal fees for the disposition of solid waste and recycling, providing for classification of real property subject to annual solid waste recycling and disposal fees, and establishing the amount of the annual solid waste recycling and disposal fees. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
The ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent. We have an ordinance approving the budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, and directing the auditor of Charleston County to levy the necessary millage and the treasurer to collect taxes for the Charleston County Park and Recreation Commission, the Cooper River Park and Playground Commission, North Charleston District, the St. Andrews Parish Parks and Playground Commission, the St. John's Fire District, and the St. Paul's Fire District, and providing for the issuance of tax anticipation notes in an amount up to $3 million for the Charleston County Park and Recreation Commission, up to $1,100,000 for the St. Andrews Parks and Playground Commission, and up to $1,500,000 for the St. John's Fire District. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass? Aye. Mr. Schwiers? Aye. Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent. Then we have an ordinance to provide for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $1,200,000 fire protection service general obligation bonds on McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District of Charleston County, South Carolina, including a competitive bank loan procurement process to prescribe for the purposes for which the proceeds shall be expended, to provide for the payment thereof, to provide for the issuance of general obligation bond anticipation notes in anticipation of issuance of such bonds, and other matters related thereto. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers? Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
All right, 5A is, the first is financial incentives for Project Pac One and Project Pac One Developer. What is the pleasure?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? One day, Mr. Moody. Okay, first reading.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and among a company known for the time being as Project Pac One, a company known for the time being as Project Pac One Developer, and Charleston County, whereby Charleston County will enter into a fee in lieu of tax agreement with the companies and providing for payment by the companies of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes, providing for special source revenue or infrastructure improvement credits, providing for the allocation of fees in lieu of taxes payable under the agreement for the establishment of a multi-county industrial/business park, and other matters relating thereto.
Okay, 5B is EMS fee ordinance amendment. What is the pleasure?
Move for approval.
Second.
Second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. 5C. I'm sorry, read the
Yes, sir.
ordinance.
An ordinance to amend that portion of Charleston County Code of Ordinance, Section 2-137, pertaining to fees in the Emergency Medical Service Department, and to add a provision for relief from debt for those patients experiencing financial hardship.
Okay, C is curbside collection of solid waste franchise agreement amendment. It's a pleasure.
Move to approve.
Second by who?
Second.
Second by Mr. Moody. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. This is the one we amended tonight. Is that correct, Ms. Hammond?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. First reading.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 2008, authorizing an exclusive franchise for the collection of solid waste from households in unincorporated areas of the county and other matters relating thereto.
Okay, so items 6A and B.
Move for approval.
Committee recommendation. Is there a second? Second by Reverend Middleton. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Council comments, Mr. Werman. Oh, my
That's
agenda.
7.
Okay, I didn't see it on my agenda item. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 6C,
Approval, items C, D, and E.
Second.
seconded by Reverend Middleton. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Now, 7, A, B, and C, what is the pleasure?
Recommendation, move for approval.
Second.
Second by Reverend Middleton, passed by Mr. Moody. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Now we move to council comment. Mr. Werman.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr.
Thank
Moody.
you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Durant, Mr. Tootin, Mr. Davis, and staff. I hope we didn't scare these new people out here. Yeah, tell them that dinner's on me. But thank y'all for your hard work. I know it's tough to wrangle these 9, but thank you for your hard work, and look forward to seeing future recommendations. And always, spirited debate is that Ms. Askew said it. It's not such a bad thing sometimes. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Spare the debate. That's why we, Mr. Sass.
Thank y'all for the hard work, and that's everything. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Johnson.
So just want to take a minute to thank Franklin Federal Center for their service they're offering in the rural area at Willtown. They'll be out there offering medical and dental services once a month with their mobile units. So we're still covering the rural areas.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for working on to make that happen. Thanks to staff. Let's see, Mr. Darby. Well, hold on. Ms. Honeycutt.
Thank you for allowing me to participate remotely. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you. Safe travels. Mr. Darby.
A couple of things, sir. Mr. Chairman, it is time for us to act toward the Housing Trust Fund, sir. So hopefully soon you can be able to put that on the agenda, sir.
Okay. Whenever you request it.
Well, I know that Reverend Middleton and Mr. Wehrman, you and I actually took a back seat. They were new coming in, and we said, let the young guys go. So whenever they decide to do so, Reverend Middleton, I don't want to steal your thunder, but that needs to be addressed soon. So whenever the two of you decide.
We got it.
Secondly, I want Charleston County to be on the right side of history. And as a result, I'm going to ask the legal department if they can come up with a resolution, just a resolution to ban AK-47s within city limits. As a resolution, please. I'd also like to say, as a summary, as the 18-year-old sophomore at Morris College, I read Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, and the book had a great effect upon me, although I'm not a socialist or a communist. But communism came into existence because Karl Marx was concerned about poor people and how they were treated by big business and management. And a part of his thesis read that the rich people become richer and fewer, while poor people become poor and many. And to a certain degree, that is true for this day, and the book was written in 1848. I just wish that the common man of South Carolina, which includes women as well, whether he's black or white, would one day come to our senses. And when I say rich people, I'm not talking folks who make $300,000 or $400,000 a year. That's nothing compared to people making $20, $40 million a year in terms of their profit. But I hope that the common man would come to his senses and say that we're not going to be ruled by rich folk anymore. This state is designed to keep poor people, whether it's black or disadvantaged whites, poor. As an example, our representatives, they make anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 a year. You can't survive that, but rich people can. That's why they can run for office. But the common man, we can't because we can't survive on $10,000 and $30,000 a year. I would ask the common man, make it a law or a salary wherein these senators and representatives make at least $65,000 or $70,000, $80,000 a year, so that poor people can run. Because if we don't experience certain things, you can't say certain things, and they can't identify with what we do. They just can't. So I guess I'm just throwing caution to the wind. But again, let me express: I'm not a socialist. I'm not a communist. But when it comes down to the poor, I do think that we need to help ourselves, because here we have. I had a student working 2 jobs just to make ends meet to help her mother and 2 sisters. That shouldn't be. I had students sleeping under a bridge. That shouldn't be. And we allow ourselves to be treated like this. So perhaps there'll be some Paul Revere to say the common man is going to rise again. But it just bothers me when so many things go wrong. Here we have a guy can buy a Lamborghini and just pay $300 in state taxes. And here come a guy buying a used car. He has to pay the same $300 in taxes. That's not fair. That's just not fair. So anyhow, thank you, sir. I'm just rambling.
Swears?
Since my wife's going to be out of town next week, she and I had the opportunity to visit the Board of Elections office and vote early. And 5 minutes in and out, very impressive. I think Isaac Kramer, I think his last name is, does a great job. And I saw him there actually. And I highly encourage y'all, if you want to get voted early, it's very, very easy.
I did myself, Mr. Swears, and we're trying to do a little bit of modification because Isaac had called me, Mr. Kramer, on last Thursday. Somebody had fell on the ramp, so we tried to do some things, and then he was kind of concerned about security. So I got with Mr. Smalls, and so we're doing some things to keep them going until we can move them into the new building. But I do agree, it took 2-3 minutes in and out.
Yeah.
And you were able to do that. So
There was a security guard there when I was.
well, I'm talking about, they talked about entrance, they still with the punch and the digital. I think he wants to be able to, like everybody else, swipe a card. It makes it easier. Reverend Middleton?
Good evening again, Mr. Chair. I have spoken so much throughout this entire meeting that I would be so embarrassed to say anything at this time. But I would like to thank everyone within county staff for everything that you all do. I definitely wanted to follow up with you. I normally don't call for executive sessions, but I think that there is a need for one, not today, to discuss a personnel issue that we discussed, but at the appropriate time, I would like to discuss that matter.
Okay, can we put that on the next agenda, an executive session, and he will go into detail with Ms. Ham about the personnel issue?
Yes.
And then that way she will be able to let everybody know. So put that on the next agenda.
Thank you.
All right, now I'm gonna move to my left, Mr. Tootin.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Ms. Ham? All right, so first let me say, Mr. Tootin, your socks is not out doing mine today, so I appreciate the compliment you gave me.
I think I got you, though.
We normally, me and Mr. Tootin, when you see us up here talking about socks, but I get you a pair of these, okay?
No, you start late.
No, we always stop. But anyway, I want to, on a serious note, staff, I think all y'all know how much I appreciate you, how much I love you. So, don't take it as a chastisement when these council members come up here and debate. Just spare the debate. I've been married for, 43 going on 44 years. Me and my wife don't agree on everything, but that does not mean I don't love her, okay? And so we debate things, and Christine, I talked to you this morning, and you're always so, helpful, and you keep that smile. How you do it, I don't know. You got 9 crazy bosses you got to deal with. So, but in a serious note, it's discussion. Okay, and I've always learned, Ms. Craven say, the majority rule. But you still have to have discussion because you want your constituents to know why you're doing what you're doing. And so, to you, all the staff, the DCs and Mr. Davis, you came in at a hot time, but don't worry about it, okay? Things get better. Winter is coming, all right? It's hot right now, but keep doing and keep on doing what you're doing. And I understand your job is to keep us out of trouble. So you can stand the tough questions, and I think you can. So I want you to know you're an asset to us, and I appreciate it. But it's just that we have to answer to our voters. And when they ask questions, we need an answer. And so I encourage them to come to meetings or watch online, so that way I won't have to repeat it, they'll see it. But, you know, people have that laxy-daisy, and I just want to appreciate it. And let me see, this, I got something, oh, yeah. To Miss, let me get her name here, Miss Moses, in the back. That's the lady that grew the garden. She was back to tell me that she grew the garden. Appreciate everything, okay? And hope to see y'all soon. And to the 10 Mile community, one more trip here and y'all should be done. Meeting adjourned.
Yes.